The next biggest winner is brought to you in part by Welcome back to the next biggest winner. Today we're speaking with top-level management of 3 public companies and hear why they think they're worth your undivided attention. Joining me next, John Carlesso, Executive Chairman of Oremex Silver. John, welcome to the show.
Good to see you, George.
So, John, you're a purely silver-focused company in Mexico. You've got a flagship property with over 50 million ounces of silver, as well as a portfolio of other silver companies. Put that 50 million ounces of silver into perspective, because that sounds like a really big number.
Yeah, as a gross number, 50 million sounds like a lot. If we were to compare it to gold or a gold equivalent, it's viewed as about 1 million ounces in terms of value. The potential of the deposit we see is something that has the ability to double or triple in size. So it's not. It's an interesting resource. It's at an inflection point where it starts to make sense and is of some interest to a number of parties or groups. I think the real eye-grabbing aspect of it is that it could be much larger, we feel, with a little bit more exploration work.
So what are the next steps of that in order to get to that point of maybe even a production-ready point? What do you got to do next?
It's ready for an update of the resource estimate, some of the economics, applying today's prices and cost factors to it, and bringing that forward through to a feasibility would be the next step, utilizing those updated economic figures.
So you're bringing up price as one of those necessary parts of a feasibility study. Silver seemed like for the last 3 years was on the tear, and over the last 6 months, like gold, seems to have taken a pause. So is it a pause? What's your view? Are we entering into a bearish phase for silver, or is it just a necessary pause as it continues to its rise?
Yeah, silver has certainly been a lot more volatile than gold over that period. It's outperformed, it's underperformed. They have generally moved in tandem. It's an interesting time. My view on precious metal pricing, there's an argument you could make that we should be seeing more of a flight to the security that those asset classes represent. I think in times of financial confusion or panic, and this has been a challenging time, particularly for resource companies over the last, really since 2008, I would say. The market in the short term can have swings that don't necessarily make a lot of sense. And I think my own personal view, that's what we're seeing across asset classes. You're seeing illiquid markets, which means you're going to have price swings, which means these logical investment arguments in the short term are not going to make much sense. So the world needs to get its act together. There are still, any number of economic reasons and factors to be concerned, and in different corners of the world there are many investors who have concerns about those. So I think 2013 is going to continue to be volatile. It's going to have some turmoil. We're going to see markets responding to headlines, and days when things are disappointing, and days when people feel relieved. So it's as the Chinese say, may we live in interesting times.
You are the executive chairman of the company, but taking a step back, and a lot of people at home don't know this, you're actually you're the head of Cervello Capital. You came from a project development firm years ago where you really cut your teeth, and now Cervello's got multiple companies of its own. So how confident should investors be in that experience? Because a lot of resource companies, I think, have come to market in the last 3-4 years where it's a few people in the industry put together some projects, put up some 10-cent stock, and all they think about is the stock. You're not that guy. Tell us a little bit about why your experience in actually developing projects is going to be an advantage to everybody who's looking at Oremex.
Yeah, the Cervello model is really to take financial expertise and combine it with technical expertise. So, and I think to be successful, particularly in this kind of environment, it's much more challenging if you only have one of those elements. My background and history really revolves around capital markets, the creation of the portfolio companies, of which Oremex Silver is one. The key requirement is to have a strong management team, a strong technical team, a strong team on the ground of geologists and engineers who can really execute advance the asset and bring it forward to a scenario where you can have a production. Asset selection is another really key element where you need to have that expertise. So that's not my role. I leave that to the very capable executives and technical people that we bring in to run the day-to-day and the on-the-ground operations at site. So it's important for investors to recognize that you need both. If you're a public company, you need to have that capital markets expertise and understanding. You need to have the ability to raise capital, particularly if you're early stage. Financing is the lifeblood for a junior company, and if you can't raise money, then you're going to be in trouble. But it goes without saying that money itself will not get you to where you need to go. You need to have the ability to advance those assets.
And that's why cervello in Italian means brain at the end of the day. John, great management, great projects. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, George.
We'll see you at the round table at the end of the show.
Cheers.
Kivalliq Energy is a uranium exploration company advancing Canada's highest grade uranium deposit outside the Athabasca Basin. With us today via Skype is Jim Paterson, CEO and Director of Kivalliq Energy. Jim, welcome to the show.
Hi, George. Thanks very much for having me.
Jim, you've got Canada's highest grade uranium deposit outside the Athabasca Basin. How much actual uranium do you have, and how much have you brought forward over the last 3-4 years?
It's been a big few years, George. Despite the market conditions, we actually came out in January with an inferred resource update of 43 million pounds of 0.69%. And over the last, basically since Fukushima, we've increased our inferred resource base by over 300% through aggressive drilling.
On the financing front, I find what's really interesting is that despite the fact that a lot of juniors are having difficulty raising money, you just announced over $4 million in financing closed. How is Kivalliq able to pull that off, and what does that say about the company?
It's definitely challenging market conditions. We're very excited to be able to raise that money, but I think the project stands, the quality of project stands for itself. Really, you have to look at in the bigger picture. Since Fukushima, which has been a very tough time for specifically the uranium sector, we've been able to raise close to $40 million now. So I think any CEO or director of a publicly traded uranium company can tell you, since the event, the earthquake in Japan in March 2011, it's been a rocky road.
Right.
And only the really good projects and the good teams have been able to raise the money. So this last fundraise was just sort of also a testament to that, to our shareholder base, to our technical team's ability to execute, and our discovery costs, very low discovery costs on a global basis for our project despite its northern location. So we've just had a lot of success in the field and really great shareholders, and that's the reason we've been able to raise the money.
Jim, how important of a role is uranium going to play in trying to solve the world's future energy problems, given the growing insatiable demand for energy in the emerging world?
It's hugely important. Currently, uranium fulfills about 10 to 15% of the world's energy mix for electrification.
Right.
And any major industrial economy will need uranium to power its lighting and manufacturing base going forward. So I think it's an integral mix, and it has to work with every other form of energy that people have heard about, like wind and solar, that they think will save the problem. Really, they won't right now, and the world does need nuclear, and it is using nuclear. And thus uranium is integral in that picture as well.
Going forward, we know that uranium supply is actually set to decrease when Russia puts an end to its nuclear warhead program, which was supplying a lot of uranium into the markets. Where do you see demand for uranium, and subsequently, tied to that is, where do you see pricing for uranium going forward in the next 5 to 10 years?
I don't really know. I don't have a crystal ball. I guess the one thing I look at is the nuclear business is actually really stable.
Right.
And demand is pretty stable. And I think what will not be stable is on the supply side. So guys like me that work for companies that are looking for uranium, or mining companies that are mining uranium, because of the current financial crisis in our sector and also the spot pricing, the supply is actually at risk. And when you get the supply-demand imbalance happening, that's when you get volatility in the spot pricing and the pricing of uranium. So, in fact, the low ebb that we're in right now for pricing in uranium, not only in the capital markets but also on the spot pricing, will dramatically affect future supply. And that could cause a real jump in uranium pricing.
And going back to, and we'll end the conversation the way we started. Going back to your deposit right now, you said it's a low cost. It's actually a low cost production, which has helped you a low cost project, which has helped you attract the financing. Correct?
Well, we're not in production, George, so it's a low cost, low finding cost. So our discovery costs have been really low on a global basis. It's a high grade project, and grade is very important. You know, you have to move less rock to get the same amount of uranium. So a high grade deposit is very valuable. And currently, in the world right now, you've got a jurisdictional risk associated with many countries. So if you're going to find a mining project, and specifically uranium project anywhere in the world, you want a very stable jurisdiction, mining-friendly jurisdiction, and an area that accepts and approves uranium mining. And Canada is a great jurisdiction for that.
Jim, thanks for joining us. Thanks so much for joining us via Skype. Great to learn about Kivalliq Energy. I'm sure our audience appreciate it. We look forward to having you back on a future episode.
George, thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. The next biggest winner is brought to you in part by